Welcome to OmegaMatters. I'm Kristina, this is Bill, and today we're talking with Dr. Aleix Sala-Vila about a newly published paper on DHA and Alzheimer's. Dr. Sala-Vila received his PhD in biomedicine from the University of Barcelona in 2004, and his research has involved the role of bioactive compounds in reducing the incidence of chronic disease, with a particular focus on omega-3s. He's completed 4 post-doctoral fellowships, including one with Dr. Phil Calder, has published 45 papers on fatty acids, and he's one of the primary scientists at the Fatty Acid Research Institute. So thanks for talking with us today, Aleix.
My pleasure. Thanks for your invitation.
So the paper we're talking about today has just recently been published. And in it, you're reporting that higher red blood cell levels of DHA are associated with lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So why did you have this question, and what information, prior information suggested that you should look into this area?
Well, that's a good question. As many of you know, there is no available drug today just to treat or delay or reverse Alzheimer's incidence. So while we are waiting for effective drugs, it's of a great importance to put our efforts in preventing, so preventive strategies. On the other side, we know that brain is highly enriched in this fatty acid, which starts to accumulate even before we were born. So during the last trimester of gestation, so there is a high demand fetus of this fatty acid, meaning that it may have a critical role in the brain function. So finally, there is a increasing belief that what is good for our heart will be good for our brain. And as you know, omega-3 fatty acids have been one of the most studied compounds of the diet in relation to health of our heart. So by combining these 3 ideas, a fatty acid which is critical by the brain need to go for preventive strategies to prevent, or at least to delay the onset, the appearance of the clinical symptomatology of Alzheimer's, and then what is good for brain, good for heart, good for brain. So by combining these 3 ideas, we go with this notion. So there's a huge effort nowadays in research on omega-3s and brain. And well, we were lucky to have this amazing information of this nice cohort of the Framingham offspring. And well, it was a good opportunity to be part of this exciting combination of different players.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Framingham offspring cohort. Can you tell our listeners what that is?
Yes. So Framingham it has been extremely important in terms of epidemiological research. It's a huge cohort that it has been studied for a long time. So we focused on the Framingham offspring cohort, meaning that these are the sons of the original participants of the Framingham. We studied around 1,500 participants, all of them beyond 65-year-olds. That's the definition of all people. So we decided to establish this cutoff, and we had all kinds of information related to the risk of Alzheimer's. We had, of course, data on the fatty acid composition of red blood cells, but these participants, we knew that they were free of dementia at baseline, so at the moment that the red blood cells were collected, and we had been following them for a long time in a regular manner. And more importantly, we knew about their genetic risk of Alzheimer's disease, because it's of course, there's a huge risk of Alzheimer's disease in carriers of one protein, which is key for lipid transport in our body. So all of us, we have a genotype of this lipoprotein. So we knew all the information of this specific high risk protein for all the participants.
Okay, great.
So can you just summarize for a non-scientist what you actually found in this study?
we found that compared to those with the lowest amount of DHA in red blood cells, the ones with at the highest amount of red blood cell DHA, meaning higher consumption of this fatty acid, it was associated to a decreased risk by half of having Alzheimer's disease. And in addition, we did some calculations and we found that in case that you were going to have Alzheimer's, you were going to have 5 extra years of life free of Alzheimer's disease.
If you had the highest level of DHA.
Yeah, compared to the lowest level of DHA. So having highest levels, it was good for you. So you can increase this level of DHA in your blood by, for instance, consuming fatty fish or consuming fish oil. Or maybe you are a lucky person with with usually higher levels. But well, if you want to increase your levels, the easiest and quickest way is just to consume fatty fish or consume fish oil.
So does this study mean that if you're 65 years old and you start taking fish oil, that you'll put Alzheimer's disease off for 5 more years?
Well, it's difficult because it's a kind of what is so-called observational study. This means that there is no causality. We observed that people with higher levels of DHA, lower risk of Alzheimer's. But maybe these persons, okay, if you eat a lot of DHA, maybe you take a lot of care of your health, you are fully aware of the importance of your lifestyle in reducing the risk of Alzheimer. So this could only be this connection, with no doubt at all, with only be obtained by a randomized controlled trial. This study, it was just observational. So we tried to focus on different aspects of the lifestyle, and we get an association, but not a direct cause. However, I think that, as said before, if we want to start and take care of our, to achieve a healthy aging, I think it's never too late, but never too early to start to implement our, a better lifestyle habits. So it's important to eat well, to manage your stress, to have social interactions. It's important also to sleep well, and maybe in the future we will have a direct study proving that if you eat fish oil, you can reduce significantly the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So we are currently working on that, trying to define this type of studies, trying to identify which persons would get the benefits of this intervention. And maybe it's important not target everyone. Maybe it's important to identify people with low levels of DHA and then treat them with fish oils, just to helping them to correct these low levels of omega-3.
Yeah. So do you have, you mentioned that one of the typical criticisms of a observational study like this is that people that have a high DHA may just be healthy, have many other healthy factors. Do you know of any other study that has not looked at the omega-3 question, but has looked at that question of multiple healthy lifestyle factors and its relationship with Alzheimer's disease? Yes.
Actually, there is, for instance, a very important one, which is called FINGER, meaning that, so it's a multimodal study involving, not only diet, but also cognitive tools, just to improve, the cognitive function. So just training your memory, sport, and it seems that it goes in this way. So
things help.
Yeah, all things help. So it's risky just to rely in just one thing. But well, if you can choose one thing, good. Maybe the next year you can you can improve another one. So you can keep improving and improving and improving.
Yeah.
Great.
So you mentioned that, so have there been any studies actually done giving omega-3s or omega-3 drugs, and incidence of Alzheimer's disease, dementia, or biomarkers of that? Have there been those causative studies done yet?
Yeah, well, if we are talking about these randomized controlled trials, just to say, fish oil can delay Alzheimer's disease. So there are no effects, but we need to understand that we are still understanding what's going on with this type of disease. We are just understanding the mechanisms of the disease. And for instance, if you go to a congress, so studies presented in terms of Alzheimer's and diet, there is no much research. Most of the research in the field relates to biomarkers, new ways to identify the disease before the onset of the clinics. So trying to find hallmarks and this kind of stuff. But for sure, maybe in 20 and 30 years, the link between diet and Alzheimer's will be no doubt at all. For instance, I think that it can be pretty similar with what was happening 30, 40 years ago with cardiovascular disease and diet. Nowadays, nobody doubts it. So if you go to a doctor, the first thing that is, do you smoke? Okay, quit smoking. And then take off the salt of your diet. So you need to improve your blood pressure. So maybe this will happen in 30 years. So we're first understanding the disease. And we are also considering that this is a long-term disease. So it's difficult to design the trials. So it's difficult. You need a lot of power, a lot of money just to follow a lot of people for a long time. So far, in terms of incidence of Alzheimer's disease, no trials yet. We have been having trials on changes in cognitive performance, which is the hallmark of the Alzheimer's disease. So suddenly, the cognitive performance goes down, which is called mild cognitive impairment, which is a clinical entity. And yes, we have been seeing different trials, maybe 3 years, 2 years of follow-up, which is not a long time, but well, it's really complicated. And these trials yielded, mixed results. Some of them seems that it's good, so fish oil can delay this fall in cognitive decline, and some of them were not so good. But it's important to better identify first which type of population, at what time we should go. So if there is some decline, it's too late. DHA or DHA plus EPA, in other fish oil. DHA plus EPA, okay, which is the dose, the nice dose? Does the chemical form matters? Should it go along with, as we were saying, with other, changes in the lifestyle? So nowadays we are trying, the whole of us, we are trying to better define, just to improve the design of these studies, because it's really difficult to conduct a randomized control trial. So I think that the best thing is, okay, let's stop, let's think, let's identify, which population, which is the nice dose just to test. So maybe when it's the good time to start, for how long, etc. But well, a lot of people working on that.
Any downside to starting to take more DHA in your 30s or 40s?
No, not at all, because maybe, well, it is said that what you do in your 40s will echo in your 60s. So maybe it's never too late. And if you can start in your 20s, it's good, because maybe, okay, it won't help to reduce your risk of Alzheimer's, because maybe you are never going to have Alzheimer's disease, but it will help your cardiovascular health. So I think that there is no downside at all. So it's never too late, but never too early to start taking care of yourself.
Great.
Yeah. And I guess the other question was you found a connection to DHA, but the omega-3 index and EPA alone did not predict Alzheimer's. What do you think about that?
This is extremely puzzling because, you know, it's one of the most interesting things. So EPA and DHA, they share the actions, they compete. One can be transformed to the other one. We must say that the important fatty acid, the fatty acid that you have in your brain is DHA. Mm-hmm. But some observational studies, similar than ours, found that EPA was the fatty acid with the highest association, so the strongest associations, while DHA not so much. We still don't know. We still don't know. But for instance, if you take fish oil, most of the fish oils contain both EPA and both DHA. So it's difficult to distinguish. I don't think that they have really different actions. So I think that they share the actions. They can act synergistically. They don't compete. So, well, I think that, okay, very good. The association was strong for DHA, not so strong for EPA, and meaning that the omega-3 index yielded non-significant, but I must say, so the risk was reduced without reaching a statistical significance.
Right.
So, but well, it was not increased risk for EPA. Yeah. So I think that we are maybe trying to put too much focus on whether EPA and DHA have different actions, and I think that they act pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, so people that are taking fish oil, just make sure you have both in there. And there's a lot of fish oil products, especially for heart disease, that are higher EPA, but usually they're so high dose that you do get a decent amount of DHA as well. But like a pure EPA, maybe you'd want to steer towards like something that has both, I would think.
Yeah.
Any idea how much DHA you should take to get a red cell DHA level over 6%? That's kind of what the highest group was.
Well, that's another important question. It was what we were saying a while ago. So the dose, it's quite important. Because, for instance, we saw that the associations were stronger in participants with ApoE4 allele of the allele E4 of the apolipoprotein E, which is an important protein in the lipid transport. This type of population has higher demands of DHA because they have impaired catabolism of DHA. So the levels are lower. So maybe they will have a higher demand. And in this way, I must say, or I must refer to the works of Dr. Hussein, Yassin Hussein, from University of Southern California. He has been testing different doses, and he keeps saying that less than 1 gram per day, not much effect in trying to treat that. So I would start at minimum, and this is not from my work. I'm referring to him, to his work, above 1 gram per day. I think that with this dose, you can significantly increase your omega-3 index, so the amount of DHA in your red blood cells.
Yeah. And do you mean a gram of DHA alone or EPA and DHA?
They were testing, I think that they were just testing DHA. I'm not so sure. And maybe I'm saying too much. I'm not so sure. Now I don't recall. I don't have this information, but I think that they were mostly testing DHA. So he has been mostly working with DHA.
Yeah. Very good. Well, we think this is a really interesting and hopeful paper. And we're really glad that you've been able to spend the time to work on some of these really important questions. So do we have any more questions?
I think we're good. Oh, there's lots more questions, but we haven't got much more time.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I was privileged to have this information. So a lot of participants with red blood cells measured, with a lot of information, with detailed information on genetic risk, which is something that it's not so usual. So I was privileged to have this opportunity, and well, it was lucky because we found the associations. Maybe you can do very good work, you can follow the people, and maybe there is no there anything of interest. But well, we were lucky. That's all.
Yes.
Great.
It's nice when it works out. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alex. And we will probably talk to you again on this podcast because you guys are cranking out papers like crazy. So next time we'll talk about another one.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Bye.
Bye-bye.